Hello there fellow cake friends, and welcome to this week's tutorial. Today we are going to be making a spooky Halloween cake, which is going to be so much fun. We are going to start off with a very unassuming white cake with some delicate sugar flowers, and then we are going to spookify it with edible blood, a gory handprint, and even a sugar knife. Find your ingredient and tool list in the description box below as always, and please don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more fun and seasonal cakes. So without further delay, let's get to this tutorial. Let's start off by making the sugar knife. This is just using my regular white gum paste recipe, which I will link to in the description box below. I'm rolling a piece of gum paste to maybe 2 or 3 millimeters thick, or less than 1/4 inch. I'm adding even pressure back and forth so it's really smooth. I've placed this on a cutting board now here so I don't cut up my silicone mat. The knife will measure about 7 inches or 18 centimeters long and 1 1/4 inches wide or 3 centimeters. So make sure you've rolled out a piece of gum paste that's large enough for that. Using a sharp X-Acto blade, cut out a straight line. You can use a ruler, but I didn't here. Next, you'll cut a curved line so it looks just like a chef's knife. Also, feel free to print out a photo from Google and trace it if that's easier for you. I'm okay with just freehanding stuff, but I know a lot of people just find it easier to trace it. So now I'm trimming the base of the blade, making sure not to go all the way through because that's going to make up our handle. And then I will cut a very straight line down to create the handle now. And the base was a bit too long, so I will just cut that off. And next I'm going to start flattening out the base part of the blade, which would be the sharp end. So I just want it to taper down just like a regular knife would. And I'll start using my finger just to pull that down gently, and then I will take a small rolling pin and roll it. Now I'll just trim the blade back so that it is nice and sharp and looks like a chef's knife again. So I'm just trimming the base of the blade once more to make sure it's at a nice sharp 90-degree angle. Then we'll make the handle of the knife. So I just have a small piece of gum paste here that I'm going to shape into a log and then into a rectangle. And I will roll that out so that the thickness is a little bit thicker than the current knife. Next, I'm just trimming it down so that it'll fit onto the knife's handle. And of course, if this is easier using a template, go for it, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I just did my best to match it up with the knife handle that I already created. Comment below and tell me what you are going to be making for Halloween. I haven't made anything in a few years because usually I'm so busy around this time, but this was so much fun. I will definitely be doing more holiday cakes. Next, we will smooth out the sides to make sure that they're nice and soft and not really sharp edges, which you wouldn't find on a knife. Now I'm just trimming the top and the bottom of the knife to make sure that it will fit. And I mean, this doesn't have to be perfect. Once I added this on, I kind of fudged it around a little bit until it just fit the knife properly. So add some gum glue onto your knife's handle, and then you can add the extra piece on top. So like I said, just doing my best to fit it on top of there and make it look fairly even. While this gum paste is still fresh, press the tip of a piping tip onto the center of that rectangle, and then do 2 evenly spaced ones above and below it as well, which just looks like the little notches or holes that you find on the knife. And we're going to be painting those silver. Allow this knife to dry for, I would say, at least 48 hours so that it has a lot of time to harden, since it's going to be sticking up vertically out of the cake. Next, we will be painting. I'm using a silver non-toxic highlighter dust and a black gel paste, both of which I will link to in the description box below. Add the silver dust to one of the wells of your palette and mix it with vodka. Make sure that the mixture is quite thick. Next, you will paint all over the blade of the knife. If there are any spots that aren't covering very well, just let that area dry and then go back when it is dry and paint over it with a thicker consistency of silver mixture. Next, don't forget to paint the bottom edge and then the top edge of the knife as well. And then I'm going to extend the silver all the way back to where the handle is, so it will be just visible below the black handle. Last, for the silver, we are going to paint those 3 dots that we made. And don't worry if these turn out a little messy, because we can always cover those areas with the black when we go ahead and paint the handle. Next, take some black gel paste and add a touch of vodka so that it's a bit smoother to paint with. Next, you will carefully paint the knife's handle. I started with the edges and then made my way all around all of the silver dots, painting really carefully because it's very difficult to remove black once it's on there. Allow the knife to dry well until it's dry to the touch. Now let's make the edible blood. So this recipe is adapted from a website called Foodie Misadventures. I'm starting with 1/2 cup of clear corn syrup. Then I have 1 teaspoon of red gel coloring paste. I did end up adding more after this first little bit, so it was 1 teaspoon in total. And give that a good stir. Then I added 1.5 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And this one is a fairly dark cocoa powder, the Callebaut Extra Brut that I use for my chocolate cake. And then I added 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch. And this is when I added the extra food coloring, and it was about 1 teaspoon in total. Comment below and tell me who you're gonna freak out with this edible blood. I know a few people were worried when I posted it on Instagram last week. It is super realistic looking. Stir everything together until it is really nice and smooth. I love this edible blood because it looks so real thanks to the cocoa powder, which adds a lot of depth and thickness to the mixture, as well as the cornstarch, which makes it not quite clear and also helps to thicken it. You can see how nice the texture and mixture looks here, and I will pour it into a squeeze bottle so that it is easier to apply later into the cake and on the cake. I think if you are making this cake, you could go for a slightly larger batch of the blood. I did wish I had a little bit extra to fill the layers with. Let's assemble the cake. I've got 4 layers, which are each 1 inch tall, of my favorite vanilla butter cake recipe, which is 5 inches in diameter. I have an 8-inch cake board, an offset spatula, 350 grams of vanilla bean and honey buttercream for the filling because I want to keep it white for contrast with the blood. I have about 300 grams of plain white buttercream for masking. And of course you can grab this Italian meringue buttercream recipe in the description box below. I also have my prepared edible blood. And I'm going to be adding a bit of buttercream to a piping bag first to make a well for the edible blood to sit in. If you want my full process on assembling and masking cakes with sharp edges, be sure to check out my buttercream class called Creative Buttercream Cakes in the description box below. So we'll start by securing the first layer of cake onto the board. And then add about a third of your flavored buttercream onto it. Smooth it out using your offset spatula. And then I'm going to clean up the edges, which I normally wouldn't do until the end, but I want to see where I'm going to be adding the well area so that I can put the edible blood inside. Now pipe a solid border around the edge of your cake. Make sure that there are not any gaps because you do not want your blood seeping out before it's ready. Next, you will fill the center with your edible blood. I did not add enough here. You want to make sure that there's a really nice thick layer, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters in thickness for when you cut the cake, so you can get some really nice drips. So keep squeezing, 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 add more and more and more, and then add some more after that because I definitely wish I did when I cut my cake open. And as long as you're using a sturdy meringue-based buttercream, I think you will be fine here. There shouldn't be any spillage or leakage before you cut the cake. And don't forget to grab that recipe for my Italian meringue buttercream recipe in the description box below. So I am smoothing out the blood here, but you should not have to because you're going to be adding more blood than I did. So it should fill up the entire area just by itself. Grab your next layer of cake and I'm just smearing a thin layer of buttercream. This is just to waterproof it so that it doesn't absorb all of the blood that you just put inside. And then I will just give that a very firm press onto the cake, making sure that I get rid of any air bubbles by firmly pressing down. And then I will continue on assembling the cake using the exact same technique. Comment below and tell me your favorite crime podcast. I have to admit I love them and it only feels fitting to listen to one while I create an edible bloody massacre cake. So you are just repeating the same thing with the remaining layers of cake, adding the buttercream, smoothing it out, creating the border, filling it with a thick layer of edible blood, sealing in the next layer, and then pressing it firmly on top. Then repeat with the final layer. Give it a quick crumb coat and then chill it until it is nice and firm. I would say an hour or so would be good, if not more. Once your cake is chilled, we are ready to mask it with sharp edges. Again, be sure to download my Italian meringue buttercream recipe in the description box below this video. And check out my buttercream class if you need any help achieving those sharp edges. They can be tricky. So once I'm finished masking this cake, I will chill it and scrape it once to finish it off, and then we are on to the fun part of decorating. So there is going to be a companion video for this video where I'm going to make the roses and assemble them onto the cake in a more in-depth way. So definitely check the description box below and somewhere in the video as well for that. So once all of the flowers are added, we are going to insert the knife. Just give it a really firm press into the cake and it should stick right into the buttercream and into the cake. And now for the fun and messy part. You will use your squeeze bottle and create some blood drips coming down the cake. I also added blood to the edge and the base of the knife. Just make it look messy, and that's kind of part of the fun here. Next, I'm going to put some blood around the edges of the rose petals and make it look really gory, and add drips wherever you can fit between the flowers as well. Just like making the abstract wafer paper flowers that we did a couple weeks ago, you really cannot go wrong with this edible blood. Just have fun. And now for the final touch. First off, make sure your cake is very chilled for this. Mine was starting to soften, which made it a bit more difficult. And also, please make sure your hand is very clean, or skip this part if you're making this for people you do not know. But if you are, spread a nice thick layer of the edible blood onto your hand so we can make a really creepy handprint on the cake. I found that I did not add enough at first, so make sure it is a decently thick layer so you can get a good impression. And there you have it, a creepy, blood drippy, splattered cake perfect for Halloween. Tell me what you will be covering in edible blood this Halloween. I can't wait to see all of your fun and gory ideas. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you give this spooky Halloween cake a try. It is so much fun. Or even just glorify some of your regular cakes with some edible blood. Don't forget to head down to the description box below to grab all the tools and ingredients you're going to need to make this cake. Before you head out, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I'm gonna have some really great stuff coming up for the holiday season, and I will see you next time.